Alright, greetings fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another video review from Fanboys Forever. And today I'm reviewing the largest item I have ever had here on the channel. And it's easily this Masters Universe Origins Eternia playset. And I've included Coco here for scale. You can see that she's demonstrating. Thank you, Coco. Much appreciated. I was very fortunate because it's really in pretty good shape. There's been a lot of people who have been talking about, it being in varying states of condition when they get it. And thankfully, aside from a few little minor nicks and things, really everything looks really good from the outside of the box. So we just hope that the same can be said for the interior. But before we begin with what I'm sure will be one of the most epic reviews I have ever pulled off, I just ask that you please subscribe and like the video. These things really do help us out, and if you're wondering how to support us here on the channel, that is definitely the best way that you can do that. So I do appreciate you even considering that option. Alright, so this will have to be handled slightly differently than a lot of reviews that I've done. Honestly, it may be slightly difficult to show this box off. This does include the King Grayskull action figure. Of course, I have an entire review about this figure and he'll be included in this, but I won't be focusing on that figure. So just know that that ships separately from this package, but was an early backer figure for people who backed it early enough. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the artwork on the front. It's interesting, and we should definitely talk about some of the things that it teases on here. For one thing, I'm really enamored by some of the really deep cut stuff that we're seeing on here, and a whole lot of the characters that they've simply just not done yet in Origins from the classic line are featured on the box, almost in a way to, I guess, assure us that yes, they will get around to it. Of course, you can see Stondar and Rockon, and of course we already know one of those is going to be on Mattel Creations in just a few days. Beyond that, we can see some other figures that they've already announced. Cyclone over here, Twistoid and Rotar, different vehicles, different beasts that we've not seen yet. Modulok is over here, which I think is really great. Blast Attack is hiding out on the side. What may be, I think, Shirella from the Eternia kind of stuff, the Powers of Grayskull lineage. And then over here, if you look really closely, you can see that they have like the Bashosaurus vehicle. And then I'm not really sure who the purple guy is down here. The Modi is here, of course. And what looks like a new version of the Horde Troopers that are red and have capes. So I think that's really interesting. You can see a Horde robot over here. You can see Rio Blast. You name it. There's so many different little cameos and things that they put on the box. And some Snake Men I'm just not familiar with at all. Of course, though, the obvious additions to the box are the awesome Laser Light, Laser Power, I always get them mixed up, He-Man and Skeletor. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with these because they were some of my favorite releases for Masters of the Universe Classics. So I can't wait to see what form these guys come in. Also, my very favorite Masters character, Hero. The artwork looks incredible here. I am eagerly anticipating what they do with Hero since he is my favorite. On the top of the box there, you can see that there's just a little guide to some of the action features, shows some of the figures and some of the different things that you can do with it. So that's cool, and I'm glad that it's in full color. All of the other parts to the box are in black and white, as you might have seen like an old Star Wars vehicle or playset or any other toy line from the 80s. I love this cool, almost coloring book version of some of the figures being displayed with it on the back here. We do have some interesting stuff, including a little bio there off to the side. It says, Eternia, the ultimate battleground, comes to life. Eons ago, before Castle Grayskull ever existed, 3 magnificent and magical towers sank into the depths of ancient Eternia. Grayskull Tower stood for all that was good. Viper Tower belonged to the evil Snake Men, and through the walls of Central Tower flowed the supercharged energy of both good and evil. Now through the efforts of Skeletor and King Hiss, the 3 towers have risen anew. Only King Grayskull can stop their evil efforts. The battle lines are drawn, for legend has it, whosoever survives the peril of Central Tower shall command all the power in the universe. If that's not an epic call to action, I don't know what is. There's a whole lot of interesting alternative figure placement here on the back, and I'm really liking it. It is a little sad, though, that you can see Keklar right there in front of Grayskull Tower. We can only hope that they're going to make him available a different way. I was really hoping they just go ahead and include him because they were so close to getting the 10,000 backers, but hey, it's a corporation, so what can you do? I do like this bottom of the box here. It talks about over 50 action-packed features and accessories, and it also says the biggest Masters of the Universe set ever, which is, you know, an understatement. And after a couple of strips are cut, you can see that on the inside, we get this beautiful foil-looking version of the box art. It's 24 by 36, and I actually bought a frame so that I'll be able to frame this artwork. You'll see it later in the review fully framed. And just so that you can get an idea of what's actually in the box, you can see that we have this kind of plastic section here that has all of our stickers. There's supposed to be a ton of them, and a tiny little mini comic. For this price, they should have given us a hardcover book. And then we just have a panel of cardboard to protect the inner box. And look at this. I love all of the pencil sketch artwork that helps you delineate what's in each box. So I think this is really great. This is frankly a frightening amount of stickers to get on a play set of this size. 2 giant decal sheets, so oh gosh. I will say that it's nice to get an instruction manual that is apparently full color, and it does look like it's printed on some nice glossy style paper. Gives you a breakdown of everything within the bags, and of course it features configurations and ways that you can assemble the set, so I'll be definitely poring over that. Last thing in the bag is this mini comic right here. Now what's interesting about this is the art style seems a little odd to me. It almost looks like the style of art that we saw in, say, the animated segment for the Star Wars Holiday Special. Interesting that Skelegod is here. Yeah, I can't necessarily say that this style of artwork really does it for me or anything. I think it's neat in its own way. I think it would be fun to see, you know, it's almost like more of a cartoon, which kind of surprises me a little bit because I definitely thought they would have went for something, I don't know, a little more regal in terms of style for a product so important. But I'll have to read that later. And certainly much ado was made about this little fella. It's Modi, or as it's called here officially, the Moat Monster. This was a stretch goal. He is a articulated beast and is based on some of the sculpting that was featured on the original playset. The box art is particularly impressive here. I love the size of this. There's never been a box like this in Masters history that's exactly this kind of size. The artwork is incredible, and I love how they even incorporated the 2 little dragons that we had already gotten. So I think that's just terrific, and especially nice that they put him in the Powers of Grayskull packaging, something I hope that we end up seeing a lot more of in this next year or so. All right, let's get this thing assembled. All right, friends, I am back, and boy, am I tired. I have been putting this thing together for hours. It's late into the night. So, just a little bit about setup. I'll tell you about my experience in here. By far, the thing that will take you the very longest is the sticker application. And they're not very easy placements. Thankfully, the sizing of the stickers and the cut on the stickers is all correct. But it is so precise that there is almost no room for error on any of those stickers. So you have to get it exactly to the spot that they have. There's no wiggle room. And I did end up destroying one of the stickers. I think the other surprising thing was the central tower, which actually had to be screwed together. And I guess that's really the only way to make something as gigantic as this stable. Other than that, pretty much everything was straightforward. The Viper Tower over there on the right and the Grayskull Tower on the left were very easy and pretty much assembled aside from a couple of pieces that you had to snap in. But that central tower, yeah, that felt like I was putting together IKEA furniture. So it was a very different experience for me. I can't say I've ever assembled a playset quite like that, but yeah, it's playing for keeps in terms of durability throughout the entire build experience, and it really is a build experience. I can't say that there was any kind of, quality problem. Nothing was damaged or misassembled or have some kind of, weird stray paint or something like that. And I have to say, I'm very, very glad that I just messed up one of the small stickers and that was all that happened, because I kept a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry about what could go wrong with this set. So one thing I definitely want to be very transparent about is the way that I did my setup. And of course, I want to inspire you. I had just a big table that I was able to clear off down here in the toy basement. And for the background, I used a paper I found out about from a miniature railroad YouTuber, and it's called Fadeless. A couple of little foliage pieces I bought at like Hobby Lobby over the years, or Michael's, and we're off to the races. All right, so definitely one of the most difficult things about reviewing this is getting everything into frame, which is almost impossible. But I will definitely kind of go back and break the illusion of my background and all of that so that you guys can better see everything. And you can see all the way from the tip top to the boundary of my sky pattern, all the way down here to the bottom. It is truly even more massive than I gave it credit for. All right, well, without further ado, let's get right into it. So I figure that the easiest way to do this will be to do a front portion of the playset, and then we'll switch around to the back, because those are two very different things. So I think it would be wise just to go through bit by bit and show you different things as we go. As I said at the beginning of the review, keep in mind King Grayskull is included for early backers, so he did come with this set. And if you want to know more about Grayskull, then certainly check out my full video review of him. All right, so we start down here at this kind of introduction area, as I call it, and this is Central Tower. And you can see this is just absolutely gorgeous what they've done. I feel like it's turned out better in production than it did the prototype that we saw. I felt like the prototype definitely had more of a splotchiness to it, and here it's more subtle, particularly on the eyes here. I remember originally on the prototype this was had a big black mark, and then this was really clean, which was, kind of similar to the original, which I don't have or anything like that. But for this, it's a whole lot more subtle. I absolutely love what they did with the eyes here. They're definitely doing a glass eye effect, and I think that works really, really well. Of course, you can see that I have Modi right here. This is such a fun design. I feel like the team did such a great job of bringing to life, a monster that was just barely sculpted into the moat. And he has all sorts of articulation, and there's hinges on the shoulders. There is a diaphragm cut right there, and you can bring him up and down. He even has peg holes on the feet, and even the tail has a little bit of rotation in there. So I feel like that what they've done here is really nice. They didn't have to go as far as they did, but I'm certainly glad this got unlocked. Of course, I mostly keep Modi down here in the moat. One thing I think is really cool is this silver finish on a whole lot of it, and it works really well, and I thought that they did a great job there. This is removable, and these griffin things that are at the front, and I like the gold plastic they used here. That was actually really effective, and it ended up looking really nice. You can see there's a fun little detail in there where there's like a spider web where you remove it, and so that was a fun little sticker. I kind of wish there was more funny little details like that in the stickers, and not so many, make or break kind of things. So I definitely want to show one really fun feature, and that's the drawbridge right here. We needed an unwitting victim, test subject, to show this, and wouldn't you know it, old Uncle Skeletor just happened to be in town. He's just chilling, having a good old time, and what you have to do is take this griffin and pull it up, and look at that. Skeletor has just been eaten by the Central Tower lion. So I think that is such a fun thing. And what's amazing is how much he actually goes up into the jaw. There's plenty of room in there too for that to happen. Another really fun thing, and this is probably the main action feature, I guess, of the set, is you have this little crystal ball over here. You push it, and look at that. Skeletor has been grabbed and eaten. So I really love that. Also, something that I didn't realize until I was just fooling around with the jaw is if you pull on the jaw, you can lock it in this position, which kind of opens this up and even adjusts the scale a little bit so that you can have larger figures. And don't worry, later we are going to show how all sorts of different Masters figures interact with this. And it doesn't inhibit the action feature because look, now it just reopens the jaw. So you can do it either way you want. I think more the default setting is to just have it down like that, and I like the look of it. Some of the most fun little things about this set is the details that they've sculpted into the moat. You can see all kinds of weapons down there, and they just have a cool paint effect that's meant to simulate that being water. So I think that's really nice. You can see classic Masters axes and things down there, and skeleton hands. So it is reminiscent of some of the sculpted details from the original set. It did come with this cool little monster, which is like a gold manta ray kind of looking thing, or stingray, I don't know. And down here there's just more weapons and things that you can see littered throughout the moat. All right, moving up, we can see the track for the transit system that we have, and this is going to be something that I focus on a little bit later. So later on we'll be looking at this and seeing how well it works and trying the different vehicles that it includes, because it does include several to put on this track. It's pretty astounding how far we actually have to try to shoot to actually get a view of the top of the tower, but you can see some of the flags there, and eventually we'll get a better look at the very tip top. All right, with that one out of the way, let's look at Viper Tower. And here we have the Viper Tower, which serves as kind of a representation of the Snake Men and their dominion over Eternia. Now, this tower is so much fun. There is a mechanism that allows us to turn the head at the top. So you can see I'm just kind of turning that around, and then when we pull on it, you can actually grab and bite. So we'll take King Grayskull right here. He's going to attempt to fight Serpos's cousin here, and you can see he can kind of get grabbed at. Now, I don't really think the bite is necessarily strong enough to hold a figure. I think it's just more kind of a fun thing that they did, but it is so cool. I also really like the sprays that are going on the mountain. Kind of reminds me of a more old school play set or something with the way that they did the paint application. And there's lots of little extra details that aren't necessarily painted that are sculpted into like the mountain. So truly this is a snake mountain, if you will. I really particularly like this gold and the way that the supports look. I wish that most gold plastic would turn out like this. And I just think that those look really neat. It goes well with the red, and I love it. It almost looks like Ratlore got his own hideout. So I think that it looks really cool from the front. I think that one area that has a lot of potential is this bottom rocky area down here. It scales well with the figures. It looks significant when you put them with it. And I just think that you could get some really cool dioramas and things going back there. So that's just one option that you have. And here's a fun one. We have Grayskull Tower. Now, the great thing about Grayskull Tower is it may not be, quite as eye-catching as the Viper Tower, but there's a little more utility to the thing, in my opinion, because you actually have enough room to put a figure at the top, which is something that you can't necessarily do with Viper Tower. And you can even fit a second figure if you really wanted to. And who knows, if you were feeling really crazy, maybe you could cram a third figure up there. It would probably start to look ridiculous, but hey, it's something you might be able to do. Once again, I really like the spray that they have going on this. I feel like the paint is just really nice, and it brings out so much detail in the sculpt. The feature that we have here is it's like a dungeon gate. And you can see that with this kind of mace looking or ball and chain kind of thing, it stays up until, say, this gets knocked over, and then it comes down. But I'll show you more about that with the actual tram system later and how that plays into it. I also really like the rock base area at the bottom of this one. There's some really strong bases for these things. And if you look, you can actually see that there's a really nice connection. Of course, all three of these towers can be easily separated. All it is you just lift this off, and they're just joined together with this. But I love how there's this really nice segue, little rock bridge down there. Of course, I'll use Skeletor. He's moseying on over. There's not a whole lot of room on it, but there's probably just enough room to make it look convincing for a figure to be down there crossing this little bridge. Now, you might be able to get them to go this way, but it's pretty crammed. You can just barely, sorta, maybe if you put one foot in front of the other, there you go. It kind of looks more like he's balancing, but it worked. Now, I don't think that these supports are quite as fancy as what we had over here with Viper Tower, so it's just not quite as iconic looking, but I think it has a lot more utility, because as we go to the other side on the back, you'll see even more tricks that the Grayskull Tower has up its sleeve. So there's several different vehicles for this monorail at the top, and I think probably the one that a lot of people are going to use is the Sky Cage. And the Sky Cage is, you know, a pretty iconic part of this set. And I'll just bring it to the front where we can get a better look at it. Here you get the first look at the kind of battery operated rig that actually powers all the different vehicles that you put on this thing. And I love how these stickers kind of bring more to it. Let's go ahead, and since I have them handy, let's put Skeletor in here. All right, now they're pretty much laying down in there, but it's just kind of funny too. Maybe he's taking a nap. So there's this power switch right here. You turn it on, and now keep in mind, these are even kind of older batteries that I have in there. So it still is really getting with it. And I think, I don't know, this just makes me giddy. This is one of those action features that I see it happening, and it kind of just makes me feel like a kid again. Of course, I didn't grow up in the late 80s. I was born in the mid to late 80s. So I didn't get to see this in action back then, but I imagine it just would have blown my mind if I'd seen something like this. So that's the Sky Cage and what it looks like. Of course, there are a couple of cool features to the Sky Cage, and I'll show you one of those right now. So one of those is this little red thing on the back. Now, you can just activate it by pulling it, and the bottom of this will come out, and it will eject whoever's in there. It will not be a good day for them. But they actually have a trap that you can set on the monorail that will do the job for you. And I just think this is the coolest thing. Trap door. And you can see that what happens a lot of the times is that the figure will actually be kind of stuck in there. And that's something that's happened a couple of times. Maybe I'm not positioning the figure correctly, but it seems like something that maybe they should have worked out a little bit better. So we'll try the trap again. This time I have repositioned Skeletor, and maybe it'll be a little easier for that trap door to be triggered. And Skeletor falls into the moat. I think the one thing that worries me a little about that particular feature is that sometimes it has a tendency to fall kind of roughly onto parts of the playset. It's probably not the kind of thing that I should activate right over this area, because I feel like the central lion there is the one that maybe would be harmed, or maybe the paint might be scuffed by a figure kind of roughly just falling onto it. So it's definitely something to keep in mind with this particular trap. As we all know, Skeletor has spent a great portion of his life in the Eternian prison industrial complex, and this particular Monday night is no different than any other. So let's see if we can trigger this particular trap and make sure that Skeletor stays in the drunk tank. I mean jail. I mean dungeon. There we go. Now Skeletor is trapped. But there's other vehicles besides the Sky Cage. So if you want to, you can easily switch these out just by pulling. And this time we're going to do this kind of jetpack looking thing. So all you have to do is slide that on till it clicks. To me, it's Man-at-Arms that seems like one of the characters that would be most likely to maybe use this kind of firepower. To me, the easiest way to do this is to use the modularity of the figures and separate them at the waist. Then you can easily put it inside the rig. And once he's snapped back together, we just take the arms and bring them down as if he's using the guns, while the legs rest down here. And I really like the effect of this one. I think it's kind of cool, the idea that we've got, Master's characters flying around with a jetpack that's mounted with machine guns. And it definitely gets into that, kind of crossover in Masters of the Universe between high technology and medieval kind of stuff. So I like this. You can actually take the sky cage and you can connect it to the top of it. And voila. Now it's like more of a turret on the top of the sky cage. I'm probably in the minority here, but it's the last vehicle that I'm definitely the most interested in because it's a space shuttle. That kind of reminds me of some of the stuff they would end up doing for New Adventures of He-Man. I think there's only one pilot that's really appropriate for this. New Adventures Jetlag He-Man. And He-Man finally gets a spaceship. And here's New Adventures He-Man in the space shuttle. I actually think this is really cool because to me, it best matches the battery-operated rig on the top that's actually powering the monorail. Not only can you open the cockpit like I shown earlier, but the back actually comes open. And this makes it a little easier, I think, to load figures. And plus, it kind of gives you a little extra bit of room, I think, if you did want to add another passenger or something like that. For my personal display, I'll probably keep the space shuttle on here because I just think it's one of those wacky Masters things. But that's not the only way that your figures can get around. Interestingly, the playset comes with, I think, 4 of these like gauntlet attachments. They kind of look like something Batman would use. So using standard He-Man here, you can see that all you have to do is just put it around the wrist. You can remove the hand first if you want to. Might make it a little easier just to put this on and slip it over. It's kind of a tight fit, which is a good thing because it really needs to be. These should work with basically any of the regular buck body He-Man figures. Of course, deluxes and things like that, you know. Who knows? But all you have to do is take this and you put it into the monorail and all of a sudden you're ready for action. I put it on the wrong side though because these supports will stop He-Man. Now this is a fun little thing. Of course there's really nothing dragging He-Man like this. You can just kind of take different characters and pose them along the monorail as if they're all sliding using one of these devices. And you can recreate Batman 89 when Batman saves Vicky Vale at the museum.
And keep in mind that if you want to, you have the ability to add Castle Grayskull over here beside of Grayskull Tower. And over here you can add Snake Mountain beside of Viper Tower. I think they look really cool. I barely have enough room even on my really large table right here. So definitely be aware of that if you're going to combine them, that it's no easy thing in terms of space.
And looking at the monorail tracks here, keep in mind that these can be reconfigured. So if you really want to, you can reconfigure the monorail track to where it is just one loop that goes around all of the central tower. And that way you can separate the towers out and put them in different locations. You know, I have the towers hooked together and I did not unhook them in the review because I don't plan on ever doing that. They better work together as one big unit, and so that's just the way it is for me. However, your space limitations and your collecting habits may make that slightly different for you. So just know that there is some flexibility even though you're not going to see it here.
I also really like how this little stone pathway has this little nook under it to where you can put creatures. And the directions actually specified that this is another hiding place for Modi. He just barely fits in there. It is a perfect fit, as a matter of fact. I almost like Modi over here more instead of in the moat, because in the moat you don't really see him as much. So I actually think that's more fun when he's peeking out from right there.
All right, and here we have the 3 Eternia towers turned around. And as you can see, this is where a whole lot of your play features and a whole lot of your real estate for figures comes in. And don't worry, by the end of the review, we'll have it turned around so that we can show you how a bunch of figures look posed up in front of it as well. It took all the restraint I had not to fill this with even more of my figures, but I figured you wouldn't be able to see the playset at that point. Let's start at the bottom here. It's kind of hard to keep everything in frame, but you can see that there's kind of a wooden bridge, and down there I've got Sunman fighting off Fangor. And Fangor is using one of the weapons that is included with the central tower, which we'll get into here in just a little bit. I really like how long the bridge is right here because it's a really cool path that you could definitely stack a bunch of figures on. You could definitely take a bunch of Horde troopers or snake men or something and kind of line them all up for a character to come through and kind of kick them over, sort of like I have He-Man there with his gauntlet. It looks almost like he's going to zip line into Fangor when he was there. You can also see it's very deep this way. It's really easy to tell. I've got Mecha Neck back there. And Modi is just barely peeking out right under him right there beside of many faces. Beyond that, there's a couple of other things going on, including this ladder. Now the interesting thing is there's little holes at different spots in the playset so that you can reposition that ladder in different areas. So if I really wanted to, I could even put it in these two holes up here, and you can kind of just move the ladder to wherever you need to go. But if you don't have time to use the ladder, you do have a crank operated elevator. So with this crank, we can go ahead and put a figure on here. All you have to do is take the crank, and it's a really nice motion. It's very smooth. It's not herky-jerky or anything like that. It really does a great job of seeming like a very smooth, almost electronic feature, but it really is just from this crank here. And you can go to any of the 3 levels. Speaking of the levels, that at the bottom level where we'll start. All right, so on this first level, you can definitely tell there's some very large stickers at play, and I really like those decals, especially the skull and the book at the top. And I like how that these 2 little areas almost look like the other side of the eyes. I know that it doesn't make any sense based on the location, but it's still pretty cool. And the other side is much the same. Moving on up, you can see that this area has quite a bit more going on. There is a computer console in there, which I think looks pretty cool. But the main event is this suspended chair. And this is actually an action feature. So all I have to do is go up here to the training dummy of the Horde Trooper, and as I spin him, I can spin the chair around. Now the clearance is a little iffy on the foot here, but if you work at it, you can kind of get him through there. Once you have him turned around, you can see that now he is at the computer console working away. But it does look pretty cool. Down there on the floor, you have a huge amount of stickering that I had to do, which is definitely the longest part of the setup. Moving on up, so you can see we do have a little training dummy right here. It is not articulated, however, the hands are articulated at the wrists. I think that's so you can put different weapons in the hands, and you can kind of have him fighting whoever. You're able to use the chair if you want to at the bottom, and put him backwards and forwards to fight whoever you have up here. You can see that on this level I do have the Green Goddess, because in the first mini comic she is the one that gives He-Man his equipment, and I thought that was appropriate since back here we kind of have an armory of different weapons and things, and there's lots of cool stuff. I won't bore you by going over every single one of these items, but there's some pretty nice stuff in here. I particularly like the design of this. It almost looks like a grappling hook of some sort, so I think that's pretty cool. And there's different peg holes on this grate to where you can place all of those. And getting to the very top, we have what I like to call King's Tower up here, because I have King Randor, and of course the included King Grayskull if you were an early backer. Now I'll get King Randor out of the way so that you can see a little bit more of what's going on. If I remove this, there's nothing about it that's attached, it just sits there. You can see some really nice stickering right there at the top. Took forever to get it right, that's the one unfortunate thing. And there's also holes for the ladder if you do want to put it up here. Also, don't forget, we do have some flags up here. Kind of reminiscent of how Castle Grayskull always has the flags that you can turn around and show which side is winning. But of course, these flags, I think, represent the 3 towers. So I think that's pretty cool. As for the chair up here that King Grayskull is in, this is kind of like a little vehicle. There's some pretty nice stickering right here. And I don't know about you, but this reminds me of the space jockey from the original Alien and Prometheus. The guy that's sitting in the spacesuit that's on the big like turret thing. And I think there's probably some inspiration there, probably. You have 2 missiles that can fire right here, and you can just press this button. I think one of the most interesting things is this turret can actually be moved, and there's little kind of ratchets at the bottom right there that kind of move through. It's kind of hard to do it one-handed, but I think you get the idea. It can be repositioned and locked in different positions, so it can be kind of lower, it can be kind of higher depending on what you need. So I thought that was a pretty cool little gimmick. Now going over here to Grayskull Tower, you can see that I do have the Sorceress and Zor up at the top. And there are some steps right here. However, it's more the female figure's feet that are small enough to actually put on these steps to use them. But I'm still impressed that I can put any figure there without some kind of trickery. I've got Roboto hanging by the monorail. And we have poor old victim, I mean test subject Skeletor right here. Now, all we have to do is slide this button, and he is now in the dungeon. But of course, the servants of evil are always at work. So all we have to do is slide this, and he is going to make his escape once he regains consciousness. I also think it's interesting that we actually have a window that goes into the tower here, and you can see out through the other side, which is kind of cool, actually. I also think it's interesting that, you can see the inside of this, but there's no real access to it. I mean, you can come up through here, but that's kind of it. All right, so I know a lot of people are going to want to buy this for Masters of the Universe Classics use. Maybe they don't buy Origins, and they don't buy Masterverse or anything like that. I'm happy to say that on this first level, there's plenty of room for a Masters Classics figure like Hero. So yeah, I'm very impressed. I think he could probably almost stand in the doorway back there. And with the jaw put back up, Hero can almost clear that. So I think that's pretty good. And although I doubt he's comfortably sitting in the computer chair or anything like that, he still works really well on the second level, even though it's shorter. Even at the training area, Hero has plenty of headroom, and at the top, you're going to have no trouble at all. Finally reunited with his dad? Even compared to the exterior, because this thing is so massive, he really doesn't look that far off. So you could probably sneak some Classics figures in here, and no one would ever be the wiser. I think it's fair to say that the one bit of trouble you're going to have is with Viper Tower's entrance right here. Hero is simply too tall to get in there. That doesn't look great. And as for Masterverse, then it's going to be fine as well. Even using some of the very largest Masterverse figures, like the Anniversary He-Man that they did, he still fits really well. And much like Hero, he still has a ton of headroom, no matter which level you put him on. So this truly isn't just a playset for Origins, although that's, I guess, the suggested usage for the playset. It can be for Classics, it can be for Masterverse, it can be for your vintage figures. The size truly does pretty much fit everything, and you won't have any trouble at all displaying whichever Masters figures that you have. And certainly things like 2000X and He-Man and the Masters of the Universe from the CGI Netflix show, all of those lines are even smaller than something like this He-Man, so you know that they're going to work just fine, even if some of the play features might be a little awkward, such as going down into trapdoors and things like that. And of course there's the question of other lines that aren't Masters related. Say for instance, like Marvel Legends. Something like this Daredevil is going to have no trouble whatsoever. Even something like the really tall 7-inch McFarlane figures. Say for instance, this Keaton Batman from The Flash. I mean, there's plenty of room. That's not going to be any trouble. What if you're like me and you made your own custom Hannibal Lecter figure out of pieces of Marvel Legends and Star Wars figures? Yes, I'm going to keep putting this figure in videos. Look at that. Hannibal goes great with the rest of the Masters of the Universe playset. Stratos, please join me for dinner. And of course, I think the one that everybody's been waiting on is to see if Wax On, Wax Off Michelangelo from Turtles 2 by NECA, if that can fit, and I'm glad to say it can. I'm just going to keep coming up with the dumbest comparisons. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but I've always thought Eternia to me seemed kind of like a Superpowers playset as well as a Masters playset. So it's kind of fun to take like the McFarlane Batman and put him in here because he looks so good with it. I don't know what it is. It's like a big bat cave, especially when you get down here to like the rockier parts. I just think that's a fun look. It's almost like Batman has like a little dock coming out to the bat boat. And look, Modi was in the bat cave too. He was there the whole time. On a side note, you do have this entire moat here. And I think this is interesting because it doesn't say anything about doing it. But if you notice, it's pretty well sealed down in there. So if you wanted to, I could see just filling this up with water, especially to almost what seems like their guide, the blue fill line there. You could probably do that. Now, of course, we know that when it comes to filling things with water and the way that water interacts with paints and plastics over time, that could end up eating away at some of this paint down here. However, I don't know. It might be something I try sometime. To me, the worst thing that could happen is that I fill it with water and then I just kind of absorb it out of there real quick with a towel or something when I'm done. So you may see follow-up videos where I do that just for fun, and let me know in the comments if that's something that you would like to see. This is definitely what you would call a statement piece, a conversation piece, if you will. It's funny because somewhere on the box they really need a little warning that says table not included because this thing truly is massive. And if you plan on owning it, then you really do need an idea of exactly where this thing is going to go. I was fortunate enough to have the space tucked away in the back of my main toy area in my basement, and I tried to plan for that by having a backdrop and everything that I would be able to utilize. But I know that this isn't going to be the case for everybody. Truly, even without any figures on it, it is a thing of great beauty. I've not had any kind of tolerance issues. Everything has really been of the highest quality. None of the floors have drooped after I put, more figures on them, which is something that Castle Grayskull had a big problem with. So I can happily say that I'm not really having any difficulties. But also, buyer beware, apparently Mattel really isn't supporting people on this, at least according to the customer service rep that I talked to. It seems like they don't even have extra sticker sheets. So whatever you get is what you get. But it was very, very well packed. And I have been seeing a lot of people's boxes be very damaged. But as you saw earlier, that was not the case for me. And thankfully, none of the contents inside were damaged either. All right, and as promised, here is the 24 by 36 poster that is included in the set. Now, I have to say, this is definitely a big highlight for me in terms of the extras that are included. Just the level of detail and the slightly lenticular kind of look to it, has kind of a special effect going on, really makes this an incredible part of this package. And I highly suggest that you all just go and buy a cheap frame and make sure that you have that if you're either getting this pretty soon or you plan to pick it up in the secondary market, because this should definitely be displayed. Really happy because this is on the wall right next to where I have Eternia, and I think it looks really cool. It's kind of hard to film it without getting reflections, but I have to say this is definitely one of my favorite pieces that I have on the wall. And with this massive review all wrapped up, it's definitely time to give some closing thoughts and overall opinions and impressions for the set. First of all, this is unlike anything I've ever really reviewed. I have never in my life bought something that was this large and this much of a statement piece when it comes to something that I like. I think the closest thing I ever got was buying an arcade 1-up maybe. And even that was sort of just, in the corner. But this truly is, as you're seeing in this camera angle, a massive thing that takes up quite a bit of space. But in that way, rather than feeling kind of panicked over it, I've been seeing a lot of funny reactions online where people are like, what have I done once it comes to their door? No, it feels right to me. Of course, Masters of the Universe is my number one thing out of all the things I collect, and I collect a great many things. But this is by far the most important. And so to see this, kind of become the centerpiece for the collection, to be able to eventually throw in Castle Grayskull and Snake Mountain maybe somehow into it and integrate it, it feels like I'm building kind of a world of Eternia, much in the same way people do like giant tables and have Lego cities constructed. This feels like something similar, and in a way it even felt like a build experience. I think the quality is actually better than I anticipated that it would be. Everything is very sturdy. It's very well made. It's much in the same vein as how impressed I was with the Snake Mountain playset. So in a way it does kind of feel like a packed version of 3 different playsets. And I think that's fantastic. Now, there's some things that we definitely need to discuss because it's more complicated than just saying, whether you like it or you don't. This was a crowdfund. And I know that I think a lot of us are maybe getting a little sick of crowdfunds, especially for a few different reasons. One of them is because they're very prohibitive, right? They're very cost prohibitive, and I think that they do have a tendency to make people feel like they're left out or they're missing out on something. And it's that FOMO, it's that fear of missing out that drives the sales on these crowdfunds. You have a limited amount of time, you've got to back it. Hey, if you back it early, we'll give you this. In this case, I'm King Grayskull. There's also a lot of drama over crowdfunds. There's disappointments when you don't meet certain stretch goals that people already had factored in for the value of whatever it was that they were interested in buying. So there's a tremendous amount of negativity and just negatives overall associated with these crowdfunds. You know, as soon as they unveiled this, I knew that this was a crowdfund for me, but that's because it's obvious by looking at my channel what my #1 focus brand really is, and that's Masters of the Universe. But for other people who don't quite feel that way, and Masters, you know, is something that they enjoy, but it's not like the driving force of their entire collection like it is for me, that's going to be a harder decision to make, to reckon with, especially now that we're looking at aftermarket prices into the thousands of dollars for this thing. I can see this for years being like this. You know, there's different speculations on whether or not a market for this kind of stuff will even exist when we're all like old people. But that's the last thing I care about, because this isn't something I bought for an investment. This is because truly I love Masters, and having this is just a really fun way to express that. I'd always wanted Eternia. You know, it's something that I just thought, well, I'm never going to have an opportunity to get that. But thankfully, that opportunity presented itself. But let's talk about cost here. I think once everything was said and done, you know, and the shipping was included in the price and everything, I think overall everything was right around $650. And so that's a very tough pill to swallow, no matter what you're getting, right? It wouldn't matter what it was or what, but $650 is a lot. But that price seems small, minuscule, compared to what people are getting out of these now on the secondary market. And that's why it is important with these crowdfunds to make sure that you definitely have a good idea of what it is about the product, or is it something that you're going to regret, or is it something that you're not really going to care about in a year's time. If you're like a lifelong Masters fan like me, you know, it was obvious. I knew what was going to happen. If I didn't go ahead and embark on it, it was going to be a serious problem in my collection. But for a lot of people, that may not be the case. You're talking about me. You know, I'm someone who's got all sorts of different Masters of the Universe collections, and they're dangling a playset in front of me that essentially goes with every single one of those collections. Like I can use all of them with this, and it becomes like this massive thing. But that's because I have a plan on how to utilize it, and I know what I'm going to do with it. So I feel like it's different for someone who's into it that far. Going back to the price for a moment, I think the price makes enough sense to me. I don't think it's a great price. I think the right price for this, with shipping and everything, would have been $500. Even if that was $499, to me that would have felt right. It feels like it's off, or it's a little too much by like $150 after all is said and done. But it is an unbelievable thing to see it in person, and it will be bigger than you think it will be. I know it certainly was for me. No matter how prepared I thought I was for the size of this thing, I just was not. And it's a good thing I had this table, because yeah, good luck to anybody who doesn't have a very sizable table. Not just a coffee table, but like an actual table. Some of that value is helped by the incredible presentation. You get some nice, you know, extra goodies like King Grayskull if you backed early, Modi, and that really nice lenticular poster. So in the end, I can't really tell you if this thing is right for you. Only you know that. But just know that there is indeed a big space commitment. There's even something of a time commitment in putting this thing together and getting all the stickers on it. So this definitely is not your typical, you know, gee, I wonder if I should get this kind of thing. I would definitely suggest this only for those who see Masters of the Universe more as like a lifestyle and more as like something that is their key passion in toy collecting, and not for folks that maybe are more casual fans. I don't think this is the right product for those people. Other than that though, I have to say, great playset. I would back it again in a heartbeat, knowing what I know now. Having the experience I've had, nothing would change. I would be happy to back it all over again. I knew that this was so massive that there was never going to be a way for me to fit everything that I wanted to into one review. Instead, you're going to see follow-up videos where I show you different dioramas and battle scenes. I figure it might be fun to do one for each of my main collections. So you'll see one that's a Masterverse scene with the playset. You'll see one that's Origins. And you'll see one that is, of course, classics, which is going to be interesting because largely I have not featured a lot of my classics collection here on the channel. So it'll be fun to get those going again with a playset. So do expect more of that content. But, you know, as my wife and I prepare for our first child, certainly my time has been a little limited. So I've been burning the midnight oil trying to get this review done and get it filmed. So you'll see those follow-up videos coming in the future. Remember, if you do want to support me here on the channel, we never ask for money or anything like that. All that we really ask is for you to like the video and subscribe, because those things help make the channel successful and help make endeavors like this worth it, where it can at least help. And I love sharing my enthusiasm and my passion for Masters of the Universe. But anyway, let me know down in the comments what you think about this playset now that you've seen it all together. Are you as enamored by it as I am? Are you impressed and just blown away and you just love the thing? Or did you get it and were you disappointed? Do you feel like maybe that it was overpriced? Do you feel like it was about right on? There's definitely a lot to feel about the set, and definitely it's okay to think that it's overpriced and still think that it's amazing. There's lots of amazing things that you can buy in the world that just happen to be incredibly overpriced. And as you know, if inflation bites us over and over again, I think that it's something that I'm just gonna have to unfortunately accept with a lot of these prices. All right guys, if you've stuck with me this long, truly, you are a fanboy forever. So thank you very much, and God bless you and yours, all right? And you all have a wonderful day. Take care, fanboy out.